Hey there folks, and welcome back to my final build video for Mycopunk until we get some significant changes. While we have gotten a lot of patches and new content added to the game, which is great, I have been expecting the glider to get nerfed at some point, but it really hasn't happened and managed to dodge all the balance changes, so I guess I'm just going to commit to it now. Also, with all these updates, I was kind of expecting some nerfs to the Lead Slinger or the Gunship Cannon as well, which we also did not see. So the meta is kind of really revolving around those weapons as well, especially with all the buffs to the Abomination HP and the new difficulty that was added. Anyway, basically what I'm saying is that I just didn't want to post this video before because I wanted to see if the glider or the weapons would get nerfed at some point. I didn't want to have to redo the whole build and the whole video, but I mean, for now, I guess they're here to stay. So let's get into the Infinity Glider, a build that pretty much everyone's using at this point. To start, we're going to go over the glider upgrades because this is of course a glider build and that's going to be the main focus of this build. Kind of different than the other builds we were doing that were based upon like elemental synergies or a weapon. The glider is unique in that it can actually stay airborne pretty much 100% of the time, avoiding most danger and kind of trivializing most missions. However, there are two caveats to that. The first is that you're going to be slowly killing yourself to keep yourself aloft because the infinite glide comes from the pair of upgrades, kernel rerouter and heat exchanger. This allows us to use rockets to refund our glide and then reduce our rocket cooldown by like 95% so we always have rockets. Then we can just spam rockets and hold glide and fly around forever. But because of kernel rerouter, each rocket's going to be hitting ourselves for about 1.5 damage, which will add up as this also stops our HP regeneration. So we're going to need a way to fix our HP and our regeneration in order to utilize this build properly. The easiest way to do that is to just play co-op, because we can add a few more upgrades that will auto-fire a rocket to heal an ally whenever we use our rockets, and then another upgrade to heal ourselves whenever we heal an ally. This lets us sustain our whole loop of self-damage and then healing, and then therefore our infinite fly. The range of the free rocket to an ally is basically infinite too. The thing tracks forever and you don't need to aim it at all. It's kind of broken and I expected that to get nerfed at some point, but it really hadn't. So while you're in a group, the glider becomes absolutely god tier because it can keep heals on allies for free 100% of the time, constantly from wherever. And then of course the glider keeps itself out of reach of enemies and healing itself as well. So it's just kind of broken. So if you're playing in a group, one person at minimum should be a glider. Now the rest of the upgrades are pretty much your choice into this kind of setup. I opted in this build to get increased fly speed, more rocket damage, and more cooldown reduction for flying in rockets to sustain things better if my fingers ever get tired, because of course that's the main downside of this build is your fingers. So unless you're using macros, which I do recommend you do, in order to keep up this build you need to be using WASD to move, shift to sprint while flying, holding space to fly, spamming F to use rockets, and then still have to, aim and shoot with your other hand. It just gets to be a lot on your fingers. And so most people that opt for this build style end up just rebinding the rockets to left click or something. Just be warned about that, it's just kind of annoying. This upgrade path is great for group play and all those heals and such, but you can use it for solo too. But I do have a slightly different setup that I prefer when I play solo glider. So when playing solo, of course I want to do more damage because I have to do all the damage. Especially with threat level 7 now, you need all the damage you can get. So of course, I want to use Merv, which lets us get like 18 rockets per lock-on, which is going to be a whole lot of damage. Now this is also bugged or something in that whenever we press our rocket and don't like target lock all the missiles, you can just eat 1 HP per full lock. If you just, tap it and just do 1 lock and release it, you get like your 1 rocket plus the 15 from Merv at the cost of 1 HP. So it's kind of insane because otherwise if you hold down, your target lock the whole time, you're going to be losing 1 HP per lock on. So that was another thing that I was expecting to get nerfed too, but it hasn't yet. But with the extra cooldown on Merv, like the rockets become significantly harder to use to sustain your infinite glide, but not impossible. I'm going to be using attrition supply here as another exotic upgrade, which is going to remove my glider cooldown and have it basically instead be cooldown on damage done. So as long as we're dealing damage, we can sustain our glide. Now, we're still going to be using Kernel Launcher for significantly increased rocket cooldowns, which let us use our Merv rockets about every 6 seconds or so. And when we have the 400% damage from point detonators, the rockets can do some pretty solid single target damage. And so that's going to be helping us retain our flight. Now, the Star Fuel upgrade here is for an extra long glide timer, which is basically just our big quality of life increase as we have more downtime between shooting where we can still stay airborne. So if we have to reload or throw a grenade or if we miss a shot or something, we don't instantly run out of fuel and fall. And this is kind of where the rockets are going to help to sustain our glide. You know, we can throw the rockets out and then reload, and the rockets are going to do damage while we're not, and then still kind of also, you know, keeping our glider up that way. But this setup is not as infinitely safe as the co-op one, so you still kind of have to shuffle around a little bit. You're still going to be using rockets to lose some HP, just not as often. But you have to be constantly damaging things to stay aloft, rather than, you know, in the other build, you could just spam rockets and go. And so with this setup, because we don't have the auto healing from like the co-op rockets, you're going to have to stop firing your rockets to begin your HP regen, or heal by, you know, going down and picking up some health orbs, or something else. You can't constantly be firing rockets because you're just going to kill yourself. Still though, you can sustain glide infinitely in the right circumstances, and you do get much better damage with this setup. In either case, whatever setup you want to use, you're going to want the high velocity targeting upgrade to give you extra damage while airborne, since this is the infinite glider setup and we're all about being in the air all the time. And this little extra multiplier is on top of all your other stuff, so it's actually really good. Now, once we achieve our infinite flight, we need to go pick up our guns. Now, as this may come as a surprise to you guys, but I'm going to be going with Lead Slinger as my primary weapon. This and the Gunship Cannon, again, are the two best weapons in the game by far right now, so you're going to want to be using one of them. Now, I don't use the Gunship Cannon for this setup because you need to mash R to reload it, and I also don't want to be mashing R and F and then using all the other buttons in this build, or you can just macro it in if you wanted to, but still, I don't want to do all that. So instead, I'm just going to opt for Lead Slinger because I can just hold down left click. Now, with this Lead Slinger setup, it's basically the same one as I'm using for my Scrapper for the most part, but we have a little bit of changes here. I'm going full auto, double action, big fat doobie, and lucky bastard for like the whole core. This setup lets us do like a brief charge, and then we can just hold left click for full auto shots with clip size 1, and then basically RNG rolls those 89% to get our refunds to keep shooting. Since we're always on clip size 1, and it's basically every shot's our last shot, each shot's also going to be applying explosions thanks to the lucky last upgrade, and then we're also getting a spread 3 of shots thanks to shrapnel loading. Each of these 3 hits gets the explosions, so we're hitting 6 times per shot. And this is in like a small area that has insanely long range thanks to double action, and we still do a ton of flat added damage since all the flat added damage modifiers apply after all the penalties from shrapnel loading, which is how we're still doing solid damage after losing 65% of it. So this setup has survived the nerfs to the Lead Slinger thankfully, but I'm worried it will get hit again. But again, for now it's not, so we're sticking with it. Anyway, for the rest of the upgrades on the Lead Slinger, I'm using hipfire because I don't ever aim down the sights when I'm shooting this thing, since we're going to be flying anyway. And the flat 30 damage we get is actually really good, since, you know, that gets applied to every single hit, so it's 6 times multiplier every shot, so we're basically getting almost 180 damage every single time we shoot this way, since we're going to be flying and hip shotting all the time. We do also have another slightly different setup if we were going to be using napalm and the fire grenade, in which case we're going to want burning tips and some recoil reduction, but you know, I'll just post that here. I'm not really going to go into it, but it's there if you want to. Overall, the Lead Slinger is going to be our bread and butter. We're going to be using it for pretty much everything because it's still probably the best weapon in the game, and I love it, and it just works amazingly here. Now, moving on to our next gun, this is going to be the Swarm Launcher. There's only 2 reasons why we have this weapon. The first is because of the Crop Duster upgrade, which is going to allow it to fire the little swarms while we're airborne without even having the weapon drawn. This is basically free DPS. Who doesn't want free DPS? And since the Lead Slinger can cover all our bases, we don't typically have a reason to swap to a second gun anyway, so you might as well be using it for free damage. Now the other reason is that because we can deal damage with it even when it's not equipped, and that does count as gun damage, it means that we can refund ammo to our Lead Slinger with it without having to swap weapons, which allows us to permanently sustain the Lead Slinger, even though that lucky bastard got nerfed a while back, so it no longer grants infinite ammo. But we are back to having infinite ammo thanks to Swarm Launcher. Most of the other upgrades here don't really matter, as nothing really affects the Crop Duster part of this gun and we're not shooting it directly. You're going to want high caliber pellets for some extra damage. That's cool. I also have electrified pellets for some shock damage for whatever reason. But really nothing else is going to help. We're never going to swap to this gun. Most of the mods aren't going to have any effect on our overall gameplay. Just make sure you have Crop Duster at the very least. For the grenade, honestly, 100% up to you. There's nothing really significant that any other grenade mods are going to have. They're going to help you out or do more damage than you just shooting your Lead Slinger. So I have 2 options for grenades, both of which are just fire grenades. The first setup is like the medical grenade setup. It heals you when you throw it and heals allies on impact, so you can kind of throw it at a friendly target or throw it at your feet for a full heal basically. You get 2 charges with 2's company, and for the most part, that's basically it. If you do the style of a grenade, it has napalm on it, and then make sure you swap over Lead Slinger's hip fire for burning tips so you can get some extra damage bonus, because that is going to be more damage than hip fire. That 15% gets applied like after all the modifiers, so it's good, trust me. But yeah, basically that grenade is just the throw for heals, and that's all I use it for. For the other fire grenade setup though, I've always wanted to use the cluster exotic, and this is probably the best setup I've been able to come up with for it. Since we're so high in the air, we can just drop the cluster straight down on enemies that are gathering below us. With this setup, we're going to be using cluster paired with volatile explosives for our bounce, so we get 10 grenades hit across a big area, and then we have 2's company for 2 of these, and restoration protocol so we can still use a grenade to heal ourselves, which is important in my opinion. And then we have homebrewed combustion for more damage, and cheap material for more cooldown speed. While we have 4 spaces free here, I can't really find any combination to fit one more 3-point upgrade, sadly. But yeah, this is basically our for fun grenade. It's not super effective in my opinion, as our grenades don't really do very much damage in this game, but it's technically more useful than the heal only grenade, I suppose, so it's a fun thing to use. Remember though that this grenade does not have napalm on it, so burning tips on Lead Slinger does nothing for us. Swap back to hipfire. And so that's basically the infinite glider setup. You're free to use whatever weapons you'd like, of course, but I found that these to be the most effective. Trident, Gobbler, and Cycler are also decent options for this setup as well, but they're just not my preferred weapons. We will be getting more balance changes in the future, of course, so this setup may take a hit somewhere, but I'm not too worried about it right now. Overall, though, the glider is like hands down the best co-op employee to use, of course, since it has party heals and self-heals, but even solo, it's probably the safest character to use. While I still prefer Scrapper and Wrangler, gotta give it to the glider. You know, they're probably the best overall character in the game. So if you're looking for a way, you know, to get through all the missions that are really tough, if you want those upgrades, just pick glider. Anyway, that's gonna be all for me. Thank you all for sticking around and checking out the Mycopunk content. I plan to keep this up as the game keeps updating, so stay tuned. If anyone wants to chat or play, feel free to hit me up in the Discord. But yeah, thanks and good luck out there.